Good morning, everybody. Enter the stars, it's Monday. Today we're going to be looking at Utopia, a 2013-2014 British television series. And to date, this is some of the most accurate predictive programming that I believe that I've ever seen. Now, over the weekend, we uploaded a couple of montages. And I'm well into season 2 on this. I'm almost done. There may be a part 3 coming later in the week. But there's enough material here today for us to go over. We're going to get right into it. And then at the end of the show, we're going to talk about the July 4th eclipse coming up and how that fits into, or possibly could fit into, iPetGo 2. Let's take a look at this. And forgot to unplug the power. That's better. And let's get started on this. Again, this started in 2013.
The latest food price index indicates that many food commodities on international markets have doubled in value in the last 6 months. The government's coming under increasing pressure to take urgent action to reduce the soaring cost of food, reflected by rocketing prices.
This obviously is the opening. This is the very first scene in the series. And it's all about rocketing food prices, which is exactly what's going on right now. Shortages. Listen.
Look, food prices are rocketing. There are riots on the streets of Sydney. No one's thinking about food.
And of course, riots. Now, these two guys are basically assassins in the film, or in the series. And what they do is they run around, and he's looking for his twin sister, Jessica Hyde. And they're both part of this program that they were experimented on, and VCs were tested on them. They show him later in the series as a young boy who has had these VCs tested on him, and he becomes Asperger-like in his reaction to violence. He's just got this blank stare on his face. This is his sidekick friend, and he carries around this, what I believe is a metaphor for ventilators. And he puts it on people's faces, and it kills them. Watch.
No, it's just gas.
And of course, we know it's not just gas. And if you look here, you see that his shirt says enough is enough. He's got the signature orange t-shirt on, as well as the Omega Man symbol on here. We're going to get into what that means, but I believe this character here, which was the gentleman that ran the comic store, was the one who it was supposed to be a metaphor for Trump. Now, this was 2013. Trump had not run for presidency yet. Nobody knew he was going to run, okay? So all of this fits into what's happening right now. Now, what is this series about? Well, it's about a manuscript called Utopia. And everyone's looking for the manuscript because a man that had basically come up with a plan to depopulate the world and render all women basically infertile through a VC. He wants to hide his identity, and he hides the identity, originally what they thought, in the manuscript. But it ends up that he actually hides his identity and the actual depopulation plan inside of his daughter. And her name is Jessica Hyde, her last name Hyde being to hide the secret plan, right? And so let's keep watching this here. So of course that's the Illuminati playing card, enough is enough. Now, we just decoded the Omega Man. Why? Because this was the film that the I Am Legend film with Will Smith was based on. It was actually based on a couple films, A Boy and His Dog and the Omega Man. And this is just film history. This is what they said. The writers of I Am Legend based their film off of those two films. So we looked at this film, and we saw that it was all about this zombie apocalypse, and the Omega Man played by Charlton Heston, uses his serum, his plasma, to try and treat and save the zombies and try to cure them. Well, when we were talking about this, and I was telling you that they're going to use real blood to come up with this VC, everyone said I was a blathering idiot and a schizophrenic, and they would never do that. A week later, Tom Hanks and his wife came out and said that they were donating their blood to help find a VC for the CV. And now it is common knowledge that they are using what's called convalescent plasma to come up with a cure. Now, in the film Omega Man, Charlton Heston, they say to him, well, we're going to come up with this VC. And he's like, well, we can just use my blood. And the guy says no. And he goes, no, that's the only way we're going to be able to do it. Now, you know what the Omega Man means. Now, Apollo called himself the Alpha and the Omega. Apollo, the sun god. He said that because he wanted to be like Christ. He wanted to be Christ on earth. So there's all these connections to the Omega. Omega meaning the end.
You go to sleep.
In the 1970s, the Soviets set up a germ warfare program called Biopreparat. The West panicked and created an organization to combat the threat. It was known as the Network, weaponizing anthrax, Ebola, smallpox on a massive scale. It was based in no country, reported to no one, and was utterly deniable. It did things democratic governments couldn't.
So you just heard it, and that's actually the truth. That there were these B weapon programs going on all around the world between countries in anticipation of an attack, and they wanted to preempt that attack by coming up with their own what do they call it? Deterrent, we'll call it. So there was an arms race centered around these biologicals, we're going to call them. Okay, so this is real, and a lot of it was not talked about, and to this day, on American soil, in places like Kentucky, we have a bunch of these biologicals sitting in warehouses. They're saying that they're getting rid of them, but why? It's like a kettle calling the pot black. Why are we pointing the finger at other countries when we've got the same biologicals on our soil? Let's keep watching.
The devil appears in a number of guises, but always as an animal-human hybrid. And most notably a rabbit.
A rabbit?
It's called the Utopia experiments. It's about a scientist who makes a deal with the devil for knowledge. The entire body is shut down. His fingers, arms, legs, hands, until all that was left was his throat. And when that stopped working, he suffocated to death.
Becky.
And then we extract.
So she's talking about a deal with the devil. And when I think of that, scientists making a deal with the devil, I think of the character Faust, which sounds a lot like Fauci. And Faust made a deal with the devil for knowledge, and that's exactly what's going on here. And she's talking about, there's several themes running throughout this series, so I don't want to confuse you guys, but there are several themes. One of those themes is another condition called deals, and it's basically like a Hodgkin's disease type of thing, or Huntington's, I'm sorry, where the muscles in your body deteriorate, and the last thing to go is your lungs, and you can't breathe, right? And so that's the theme, not being able to breathe. I'm hoping that you're seeing that theme. She just mentioned it, and then you saw the guy earlier with the face mask, and he mentioned it or showed it. So keep watching.
Sequence polymorphic.
When that stopped working, he suffocated to death.
Becky.
And then we extract sequence polymorphic loci from the patient, put through an amplified testing process, using PCR. Very exciting.
But we still have over 20 million shots of Tamiflu for the swine flu that never hit. Russian flu's been around forever.
Those bastards have got a real bee in their bonnet about the bloody vax.
So what those gentlemen in the room, we shouldn't call them gentlemen, call them demons. They're sitting in that room basically trying to capitalize on what they already know is going to happen by coming up with the VC before it hits. And that's exactly what they do. And they're trying to convince the manufacturer, hey, make this. We want to sell this to you so that you can make it. And the guy's like, why would you do that? We're not even dealing with that right now. And now you know why. It's all about making money because they already know what they're going to do. Follow the money.
The H1N1 pathogen, this new strain, is about to mutate and will have potential for mortality rates in the hundreds of thousands.
So he's like, it's going to mutate. How would he know that, right? It's because they already know. They already know the agenda. They pull all the strings, and it's all about making lots and lots of money.
Made a thorough report.
And will have potential for mortality rates in the hundreds of thousands.
And we don't agree with it. Neither does the WHO or the Geneva Medical Institute.
You're actually saying that the tsunami...
So he's trying to counter them. He's like, well, they don't, this is not popular science. And he's like, no, you're just going to do it because we have money and we're going to make you do it. And then we're going to make a bunch of money. Now, listen to this part. They talk about the tsunami and the conspiracy theories surrounding how those happen sometimes. And they're talking about a tsunami bomb. Listen to this.
Neither does the WHO or the Geneva Medical Institute.
You're actually saying that the tsunami that killed, hundreds of thousands was the American military testing a weapon?
Called a tsunami bomb. A strategically placed nuke on the seabed. Technologies existed since World War II.
The only time he was ever trouble was when they tried to give him a new brand of drug. The drugs were made by a company called Covat.
Now, Covat is the name of the company. Sounds a lot like COVID, does it not?
It's like Huntington's. It's a neurodegenerative disorder where the entire body just shuts down, and it's hereditary. In 2008, a researcher at Berkeley called Norton wrote a paper into a new disease called Diels syndrome. Diels has no genetic history whatsoever. It's not present in parents, relatives, nothing. It's like it just popped into existence in 1986. So he thought that Diels must have been a man-made disease. So he looked into the patient's backgrounds for a common denominator. Nothing. They'd all, at some point, worked for Covat.
We're getting more information on our breaking news story, the outbreak of flu in the Shetland Islands. We can confirm 2 more people have now died.
They'd all, at some point, worked for Covat.
Bringing the death toll to 11. That's 11 now dead on the Shetland island of Fetlar from the suspected outbreak of Russian flu.
And of course it happens, the flu happens, just as the rich elite predicted. And they're perfectly poised to offer the solution, problem reaction solution.
18 dead, 33 infected. There's only 86 on the island. Jeff's ordered a quarantine. No one gets in or out. If it's a new strain, it's got infection rates already of 58%.
58%.
Now, all those numbers she just said mean something. 18 is 6 and 6 and 6. 33, of course. And 1986 was 33 years before the CV came out. And you're going to see, we're going to do another decode on the film, the TV series Dark, and Netflix series Dark, because it follows the same timelines. 2 separate TV shows, years apart, and they follow the same timelines. 1986 to 2019, 33 years. And also in the Dark series, it goes back in time another 33 years for a total of 66 years in that time loop. And we all know what the number 66 means. Let's keep watching.
58%.
The last number she mentioned is the number 58. And of course, we've gone over and over again. The 58th election won by Donald Trump. The 58 bedrooms at Mar-a-Lago. The 58 stories at Trump Tower. The 1958 Western about the wall. And Trump.
58%.
58%.
Michael, thank God you got the vaccine. You're a fine.
Your father was working on a project called Janus before he died. They have it. They're going to test it. The last thing your father was working on were viral delivery vectors that attack the human genome. He said that this is the end. He said that we are all finished.
Now, Janus is the name of the project. Once you get into season 2, they reveal that. Janus is the two-faced god, and it's interesting. Trump called Justin Trudeau two-faced, right? Justinian was the emperor of Rome who tried to make Rome great again. We went over all of that in the previous shows last week. If you haven't heard of what I'm talking about, you got to get caught up, because all this stuff connects together. Justinian was the Trump character. Justinian was mentioned in a time travel novel decades ago, and he was the Roman emperor who wanted to make Rome great again, and he did that almost in many of the same ways that Trump is trying to do it, but it ended up failing, and Rome failed for the final time, or so they tell us. I think we're in Rome today. Now, let's move on, because we've talked about the 5G whiz connection and the smiley faces. And this scene here, he's in the bathroom. Remember, this guy's an assassin. And his phone rings, and his bag that he carries around is a smiley face. Just like the eclipses that we said, or the eclipse of December 26th, Apollo's birthday, kicked off all of this. It was ended by the summer solstice eclipse, which happened just a few days ago. That's the cry later, sad face, eclipse path going across and under China. And the very first eclipse was the smiley face. So it was smile now, cry later. In the beginning, they were trying to get us all to look at the positive of this. This is a good thing. You're forced to spend time with family. We're going to give you guys checks. Everything's going to be fine. That we're going to bail out all the businesses. And now everyone's crying later with the cry later eclipse, the sad face eclipse. Now watch this. Now, this is the other film that I Am Legend was based off of. It is called A Boy and His Dog. And that film actually featured, who was it? Don Johnson from Miami Vice. This is one of his first films ever. This is way back, I think it was in the 70s or the 80s. And look at the smiley face on the explosion there. And it was set in the year 2024. A Boy and His Dog. Now, the film is just really lame. I tried to watch it. I tried to decode it. There's really nothing. It's just Don Johnson, and he's like this horn dog, and he runs around, and all he thinks about is women, and he's in this post-apocalyptic world, and that's pretty much it. He's in this like desert landscape, and so I don't know how they got a lot of their inspiration from that film, but that's what movie history tells us. That I Am Legend came from A Boy and His Dog, as well as The Omega Man. Let's keep watching here.
What did Jessica tell you about her father's ideas, Ian? On racial purification?
Survival of the genome, in which he advocated a human cull. This is the same man who became involved with weaponizing disease.
Now, you heard that. We all know what that's about, and that's ultimately the goal. They're not coming out and saying it unless you're in a decode like this, but that's what they want to do. And this part, they talk about who gets sick. If you listen carefully as she's toweling off this boy's head, you will hear them say that a few, like 3 healthy men got sick, but the rest already had pre-existing conditions. This is exactly what we're experiencing right now. Remember, this was 2013. Listen very carefully.
Involved with weaponizing disease.
3 apparently healthy men in their 20s are now Initial reports had indicated that everyone who died had an underlying health problem.
Had a look, found out it didn't exist.
Now, this segment talks about SARS, and this scientist basically admits that he was on the team that was trying to deal with SARS, and he said it never existed, that it was a series of underlying health conditions and a series of related pneumonia-type symptoms that were all bunched together to make it look like there was an outbreak. Listen, this is crazy.
SARS didn't exist.
No. The whole thing was just a series of unconnected respiratory infections.
The whole thing was just a series of unconnected respiratory infections.
So, I filed my report. Took me under an hour to discover that there was no causal link. Within a week, I was discredited, research destroyed.
So he was the scientist that discovered there was no causal link, and they blackmailed him. They basically destroyed his life because he did not go along with the plan. This is the problem with believing authority. You know, so many people, they use the argument, oh, well, you're not a professional. You don't know. How can you say this? We should just listen to the professionals. Listen to the people in authority. Well, the problem is the people in authority have an incentive, and it's called money. Why would you listen to someone that is corrupted by money and that is proven in the past that money is what rules? This is what they're going to use, and this is how they're going to shape the agenda. Why would you trust that? Why wouldn't you at least question it? At least have your own ideas about things instead of just believing everything, especially after you see it pre-programmed like we're showing you today.
Fired. The pandemic affected just 8,422 people and killed 916.
Well, but people died. SARS was
started in November 2002 and lasted precisely 7 months. By summer 2003, it no longer existed. Do you know how many people die each year from random respiratory problems? SARS did not exist. Next.
So, he's telling you right there exactly what this is. They come up with these random illnesses, and then they all they got to do is say it mutated. Oh, it mutated. Really what that is them just making up a new one, right? And then he's like he just said it, all of a sudden it came and it went, it was gone. That sounds like something's going on.
Question, why did they do it? You've heard of the parent company, Corvat.
So that's bombshell, because he just talked about everything, and now he just mentioned the company, which sounds exactly like what they just named this latest SARS virus. This is crazy.
It was chemical poisoning.
Then he finds out that a lot of the people that they blamed the SARS on were chemically poisoned. He's looking at this document here. Okay? So there's a little bit of that probably going on. That's how they can create the numbers that they need, right? Let's keep going. Of course, there's Janus, and look at the logo on the neck. That would be what appears to me an eclipse. Everything we just talked about. Here's some documentation about Justinian and that in his association with the double-faced god Janus. Okay? And what's the mention? They talked about how Justinian's government said one historian, was in its church policy a double-faced Janus, with one face turned to the west, asking for direction from Rome, while the other, looking east, sought the truth from the Syrian and Egyptian monks. We have a president with a two-faced church policy, Justinian, saying he's a Christian, but all the actions point a different direction. Now, we also proved that the press was already comparing Trump to Justinian before he even got the nomination for the presidency in 2016. We showed you stories on that. So, you know, I'm not just saying Trump's Justinian. I've shown you guys proof. That was last week, if you missed that show.
Roman mythology.
God with two faces. It's Janus. And that's how they get it into us, via the food chain, the same way they did with BSC.
The disease.
So they get it in through the food chain, and of course Gemini, which is the twins, is also Janus. The two are synonymous. They're metaphors of one another. And of course, Trump's a Gemini. There's so many connections.
That targets certain races.
What if it's not the disease is selective? What if it's the cure?
So now it's not the disease anymore. It could be the cure, which is the VC, right? And that's how all of this ends up materializing. Is you end up seeing that it is in fact the VC that will cause the sterilization. That's what the series ends up showing as the story develops.
Russian flu.
It'd be noticed. Testing.
Maybe it looks like something else. There's tons of bacterial shit in food and in
weapons-grade flu virus so that it can be hidden in food. And Covat make a vaccine that's only effective on certain races. Right, how do you get flu?
Somebody sneezes and you breathe it in.
No, you ingest it. Mostly you get it on your hands and you ingest it.
So right there, now I don't know if that's true or not, but that may be true. And so we're all so focused on, these airborne particles and all this, right? But really, it's just all over everything. And so what's the deal with the masks then? Let's keep going.
I mean, after Fettler, people are terrified. One more outbreak like that and they'll be rioting to get it in their arms.
Pergus Holdings, they're massive, like Kraft or Nestle, and they manufacture everything from crisps.
And look at the horse on his shirt. Just like the horse in I Am Legend, it's on the Joker card, right? It's on the Trump card. He uses it as a bookmark inside of the book. And it's set to Apollo's birthday, is where the almanac's open to. Will Smith opens the book, and it's set to December, I think we found out it was either December 21st or December 26th, the date of the eclipse. This eclipse just keeps coming up over and over again.
To fizzy drinks, to pet food, and see that symbol? It's everywhere in part 2. Don't you recognise that symbol? That is their logo.
Now, by the end of this, I know we're all over the place, but let me try to put all this in perspective for you. Okay, obviously you see the barcode there, but what's most important to understand is by the end of this, they discover that there are two separate components that cause the infertility. That one of them is one place and the other is in the cure or the VC, right? And so this is basically there's a dual approach to this. It comes from two sides, and combined together, that is what causes the infertility. So keep that in mind as they uncover that this logo is basically the logo of the food manufacturer that makes most of the food. Okay?
GCHN1 protein is everywhere. I made sure it was everywhere. What more do you want?
Wheat bread or corn with a softer husk. It could be broken down, used in animal feeds. The protein that we bred into foodstuffs, okay? A modification of corn contains a modified amino acid that helps the softening process, but it's not necessary for it. The amino acid is absorbed harmlessly into the body. It saved farmers billions. Everyone wanted it.
What does the protein do?
It doesn't do anything.
And it doesn't do anything because it has to be combined with the other element. Listen to this guy.
What you are doing is right. Brown people, white people, Jews.
He was talking about survival.
We've now passed 7.
Did you see that square and compass on the ceiling? A lot of people didn't catch that. Listen and watch.
People, Jews.
He was talking about...
Right there. There it is, right there. Hidden in plain sight.
Survival.
We've now passed 7 billion on this planet. Food prices are rising. Oil is ending. When our resources end in 20 years, do you really think we're going to just share?
So your answer to that is some kind of genocide?
No, it is not. It is not genocide. Our answer to this is Janus. Janus consists of a
and Janus sounds like Janus side, right? And he's trying to make the argument for why they had to come up with this to control the population, not through killing people, but by just preventing them from having new children. And eventually he believes the population will stabilize. Now here's the problem with this, and this is the big lie, and this is why you just don't believe scientists and authorities just because they say something. You have to use your own brain. Everyone on this planet can fit inside the state of Texas with 50 miles between them. That's the truth. What's up with the rest of the planet? Well, if you live on their grid, yeah, spaces can get kind of tight. But why is it a rule that you can't go out into undeveloped areas of the planet that have perfectly good growing soil, lots of resources? You guys, South America is full of fruit trees and papaya and this and that. Anywhere in the tropical zone, there's just endless amounts of free food just growing on trees. Everywhere. Why do we have to be stuck in an economic system? It's because it's control. And a lot of it's fear too. Most people are too afraid to go out and be pioneers and go out in unincorporated and uninhabited areas because we're told that you need a doctor. What if you need a doctor? What if you have a heart attack? What if this? What if you cut yourself? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's all fear. And are we going to allow that fear to then create a new form of fear that lies to us and tells us that we're overpopulated on this earth? No. We're not overpopulated. Do you think God doesn't have a plan for how our populations exist? In balance in nature, of course he has a plan. But they want to give you this argument so that you're so afraid of population growth, and then you'll start to believe that we need to control it somehow, right? So don't listen to the lies. This is why you have to think for yourself. There's plenty of resources on this planet. Look, they talk about fossil fuels, right? You don't need fossil fuels. Why? If you're in the middle of the jungle and you've got trees growing all around you that are bearing fruit, what more do you need than a bike? If there's no road to drive the car on, a bike and a boat. How much, you could row the boat, or you could, if you got a small engine on it, you're going to use way less fossil fuels than the people like this, the elite, who have their big factories and they're flying on their jets. One jet flight from one country to another by this goof, you wouldn't use that much fuel in a lifetime with a little motorboat. One jet ride. Do you see the hypocrisy here? What this is really about is people like this person wanting control of everything and wanting to do what thou wilt with no ramifications, no consequences. They want a world where they can do whatever they want with whoever they want. No one can tell them what to do, and they have servants in a servant class in a very tight-knit community, or a very small community where you're in a box. You come out, you go to work, you serve the elite, and you go home back to your box in a city. That's what they want. And if they could have it their way, they'd have you all in one giant city somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. And they would have the rest of the world to fly around and do all their stuff with. You see how this works? This is why you don't listen to these people.
Protein and an amino acid.
Listen.
This is Janus. Janus consists of a protein and an amino acid. Independently of each other, they're harmless. The cell targeted can no longer replicate itself and is thereby rendered useless. The change is permanent, but when they're brought together in the subject, they act as a genetic trigger that prevents chromosomal division and hereditary.
And which cells are targeted?
Those that control fertility. The purpose of Janus is to sterilize the entire human race. Predict the population will plateau at 500 million in just under 100 years.
500 million, exactly what they said on the Georgia Guidestones. They're laughing at us. Okay, we see all these monuments coming down around America, do we not? This is what shows me we're still divided. If they're taking down all the wrong monuments, and one of the most important monuments that could or should be taken down would be one like this, that tells you that we are still lost. people are still stuck in the right-left paradigm. You guys, the paradigm was created to do exactly what it's doing, to separate you from the person standing next to you. Now, I'm not calling for anyone to do this, obviously. 500 million.
By then, normal breeding rates should resume on a planet that will feel empty. To do nothing is insane. You accuse us of being genocidal. Not acting is genocide.
Sterilizes people. 90 to 95% of the people who receive the Russian flu vaccine will become sterile.
So they just spelled it out for you right there, okay? Now, do we know that that's what's going to happen? I don't know. Well, let's look at part 2. And this is well into season 2, which came out in 2014. Still long before any of the current events that are going on. And let's get started on this one.
Telling people to stay calm. Do not travel unless you absolutely
Do not travel unless you absolutely have to. Quarantine.
have to. Keep children, the elderly, and the most vulnerable at home. We have a vaccine.
I repeat, we have a working Russian flu vaccine and it will be going out tomorrow morning.
Now, what I want you to do is to pop in there, close your eyes very tight, and count to 99. Will you do that for me?
So there's your 99 red balloons, and those of you that have come to the channel know exactly what that's about. Unbelievable. Now, we are going to be covering an event that happened 99 years ago. This is from the film The Shining. And this was 99 years ago. And I believe that this is the scene from My Pet Goat 2 with the party horn and Baron Samedi. We're going to examine that a little bit later in the show once we finish with this montage here. Now this part, all the VCs are in this warehouse, and the group that you just saw want to stop this from going out. They discover the plan and they light the whole thing on fire. And this, I believe, was predictive programming about all the riots and all that going on. Of course, the African-American guy is the one that throws the Molotov cocktail and lights the warehouse on fire, because that all goes back to BLM.
Outside baker shops throughout England and Wales, with most stores limiting customers to one loaf apiece.
He says queues, which basically in England, they have different vernacular there. A queue is a line. Like when you stand in line, they call it a queue, which also sounds like the letter Q, right?
The Electricity Council have now drawn up their contingency plans for cuts and disconnections once the strike begins and the supplies to the power station.
World leaders, scientists,
Ice and Fire. You ready for this? That's the actress who played in Game of Thrones. With the bright red fiery hair, but she lived in the Icelands. And she met Jon Snow. And Jon Snow and her fell in love. You see how all of this is interwoven, and it's well beyond anything that any writer or series of writers could come up with. This entertainment media is the devil's Bible. That's what it is. It seems to be inspired by something greater than a typical intellectual mind could pick up. But we're seeing it. This is the devil trying to recreate what God has created. God created the Bible that is miraculous with deeper meanings that could be uncovered for all eternity. We've uncovered many of those deeper meanings on this channel. Well, the devil is trying to make his evil counterpart. He wants to be like the Most High. So he created Hollywood and entertainment media, that's where you find all these synchronicities that there's just no way that these writers got together. This is some kind of demonic inspiration. And if that scares you, then you should never turn your TV on again. But 99% of the people that come to this channel still feed off of some kind of entertainment in your lives, whether it be movies, television, commercials. It's in all of this stuff. So you need to know what you're looking at so you're not deceived. This is the Fire and Ice Girl. Now, she's talking here in this scene about this very Bilderberg-esque type of meeting that all of these scientists meet with every year, meet together, and they discuss where the world will go. Watch.
Applies to the past.
World leaders, scientists. No one knows it exists. It's only held once every 4 years, this. The idea is to get people together who could never normally talk. Like politicians.
We introduce the fungus to the gut of the mosquito. We just need a more virulent strain. Dengue fever, yellow fever, West Nile virus. We believe we are very close. Ending the mosquito ends malaria.
So obviously this guy's gonna, use these mosquitoes to quote unquote. Basically, he's gonna try to inject these mosquitoes and get rid of mosquitoes, and then in turn get rid of malaria. But we know what this is. Doublespeak. This is doublespeak for exactly what Gil Bates is trying to do right now, is to use these mosquitoes, right? This is what they're really talking about. Now, this is that assassin when he was a little boy, okay? The one that we showed earlier with the smiley face bag, except he never smiles. You see the juxtaposition, you see the duality of that. The boy who never smiles carries around a smiley face yellow bag. And here he is here, his father, this is the scientist that came up with Janus. He developed Janus. And he also did experiments on the boy, which caused him to have no emotion, like an Asperger's type syndrome. And the mother is like, she's like, why is he not smiling? And the dad's like, he doesn't admit at first that he's experimenting on him, and then later he admits that he did.
I experimented on him. I was trying to inhibit violence. I needed a human subject. He was all I had.
It's fine, Brosco. You'll grow out of it. Just a phase. It's fine.
It changed him. I've been trying to put it right. I can't.
Alfred Broughton, Labour MP. He's at death's door, apparently.
And you want us to push him through that door?
Heavens, no. If you did that, the vote might get delayed.
Much of it owned by China and the United States.
Now, this, I believe, is one of the most profound synchronicities, because we just talked about this a couple days ago. The purple Astana, Kazakhstan. The heliotrope purple, when we were decoding iPad Go. That video is going viral. It's got 12,000 views. And here we are. And when I got to this scene, I almost fell on the floor, because I'm like, we just talked about Astana in the purple heliotrope. Watch this part.
The Kazakh government has announced that it's to continue with plans to compulsorily purchase several million acres of arable land in Kazakhstan. The Kazakh president has said that with the continuing wheat crisis, his nation is struggling to feed its people. The US has strongly condemned the move, likening it to Soviet-era renationalization.
So basically they're talking about growing food, and the Russia and Kazakhstan are basically gaining power by basically nationalizing the growing of food, and this is a threat to the US. And that's the dialogue that you just kind of heard right there. So I went into Google Earth. I pulled up this pyramid because I'd seen it before. We did all kinds of decodes on this pyramid in Astana, Kazakhstan over the years. And lo and behold, the Feathered Serpent. Now, what I don't show in this next part is that when you draw a line from this Feathered Serpent that you're about to see, it actually aligns with the temple of the Feathered Serpent halfway around the world in Mesoamerica. Now they've concealed the serpent that is on the feathered bird underneath a pond. You can only see it when the pond is empty. It's under the water. As above, so below. This is Astana, Kazakhstan.
I want to see what he did to you.
Now, obviously, they've hurt her arm, and there you see the smile now, more smiley faces, and then when you flip it upside down, it's cry later. They got 2 sets of eyes on her arm. Which, of course, again, is the pair of eclipses that kicked all of this off. The complete cycle, the duality, fire and ice, smile now, cry later.
I have taken the decision that Korvat will be bailed out. Full manufacturer of the Russian flu vaccine, we believe that Korvat cannot be allowed to fail.
Russian flu.
So obviously those are the bailouts, and all this money being put behind the VCs by the federal government, by Trump himself, under Operation Warp Speed, to get this out before Christmas. This was 2014, you guys.
Russian flu has the potential to kill millions.
So, if Russian flu strikes, you will be protected.
But there is a vaccine. As usual, we'll get it first. The developing world left to beg, left to die.
As of today, we are making the vaccine, and this will happen at an unprecedented pace.
The 16th of November, V-Day. It means us waiting a few months for the vaccine, so that they don't have to wait decades.
Okay, so V-Day, that was a lot. That was a word sandwich right there. But basically, in the series, they call it V-Day, the day that the whole world, all together as one. Do you remember that phrase? Together at home. All together at one. Everyone will get it all at the same time, so that we need to watch for this. Because if they say something like that, it's another confirmation. If they say, look, we're going to give this to the developing world and the elite. Can you say no? Not this time. See the double speak here.
Isn't that worth it? Support V-Day.
Say no, not this time.
This time, we live together.
We live together. We live together.
Together at home.
But we want to say no, not this time. V-Day is an initiative started by the Russian Foundation to get the Russian flu vaccine to everyone at the same time.
Rushing it right in your arm. Russian. So, where does that bring us? Well, it brings us back to a particular eclipse that will be occurring on the summer solstice, the one we just showed you in that montage. The summer solstice eclipse happened already. There's another eclipse scheduled for the 4th of July. That is a lunar eclipse. Yes, on the 4th of July, there will be a lunar eclipse. And it just so happens that in Pet Goat, they show us the 4th of July. But is it really the 4th of July? There's two things going on in the scene. Now, this who you're looking at here, this is Baron Samedi. He is the voodoo god of Haiti, where he originated. He actually originated in West Africa, came over to Haiti when the slaves were brought over. This was part of their religion. He's the voodoo god. And what you're looking at in this scene is not only the fireworks of the 4th of July, but you're seeing the party favor. This is called a party horn. This is typical of New Year's and birthdays. Party horns are not typical of the 4th of July. So you've got two elements going on. Now, we've decoded this years ago. 2013, we decoded this. And what I'm telling you then is exactly what I'm telling you right now. But we've found a couple of other things. This is a New Year's birthday party favor. Here it is right here. Let me show it to you. It's called a party horn. This is it. And okay, so why would a party horn only be used during birthdays and like New Year's? It's because the party horn signals some type of climax. It's when you're counting something down. So obviously when there's a birthday party, you're singing happy birthday, and at the end the candles get blown out and there's a climax. The party horns go off, everyone starts blowing and making a bunch of noise. Same thing happens on New Year's Eve, right? There's a countdown, climax, everyone pulls out their party horns and they blow these. But it's different for 4th of July, Independence Day. There is no countdown. I mean, unless you consider like the fireworks, but usually those just, start happening and there is really no countdown type of thing, right? So, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading something in it that's not there. But these party horns are not typical of 4th of July. So, where are you going with this, Casey? Well, there's a particular scene that happened 99 years ago. Remember the 99 red balloons? This is from the film The Shining. At the end of that film, they show Jack Nicholson in the bottom here. Look at these creepy pictures. Yeah, that guy looks like Fauci almost. Look at this guy. I don't know. Anyway, they show this guy with this horn, right? Same thing. Except, here's Jack Nicholson, and if you look at the bottom here, 99 years ago, 1921, this is the 4th of July. So again, you have this weird juxtaposition. You have 4th of July and New Year's party horn. Now, there's something very interesting, because why is Baron Samedi pictured here? What's the significance? Well, are you ready for this? Haitian Independence Day, their Independence Day in Haiti, is on our American New Year's Day. It's the same thing. So while we're celebrating New Year's Day, they're celebrating their independence. See the flip-flop? See the as above, so below? This is exactly what Jack Nicholson is holding his hands up like the Masons, as above, so below. And there's probably much more to this image than meets the eye. I looked through some of these faces to see if anyone looks familiar, because this is the kind of thing that they would hide. This guy kind of looks like Trump's dad a little bit, but it's really hard to tell. This guy looks a little bit like Fauci, I guess, maybe. But there's this whole scene of people. Now, I think the story behind this image that appears at the end of the film The Shining is that Jack Nicholson's face was like superimposed onto some old photograph. But these might be a group of elite people from bloodlines. And so it'd be interesting to see, bloodlines often carry over with physical traits. Interesting to see if any of these people line up with what's going on right now in history. It's like, where's Waldo, right? So that's what I wanted to show you guys today. It's interesting to note that in 2012, when Trump was 66 years old, he was against VCs. In fact, he got called out for it on Fox and Friends. He says, I'm all for VCs, but I think that when you add all these together, and then 2 months later, the baby is so different. I've known cases, he says. So, he knows. So, why did his appointment for the FDA threaten to force states to do away with their religious exemption. If he already knows and he spoke this, why was he threatening to force the states to do away with their religious exemptions? And why is he now fast-tracking this thing and telling, we're still in the dark about whether or not this thing's going to be forced on everybody? But I can tell you right now, they're not making tens and hundreds of millions of these VCs just to store them in a warehouse. They're going to make a lot of people take them, or try to make a lot of people take them, is my guess. So that was the show for today. We've got a lot of other shows scheduled. Let's show you guys those. No, I don't want to exit the stream. Well, we've got a couple of other shows scheduled for the rest of this week, so stay tuned. All very relevant stuff. Let's go into the chat for a little bit. All right. Takes a minute for this to catch up. Okay. The world's economic... Oh, that went by too fast, sorry. They will try to take your kids by force. I believe that is coming. I absolutely believe that. It's actually happened a few times so far. People that are not complying are going in and removing their children. Faith is as a mustard seed. Yes, if all of us had just a little faith and stuck to our ground, stood our ground, and stuck to our morals and values, if we all did that, hello. Problem is, we can't all get together. We can't all get together. Because of fear. There's all this fear. All right, let's see if we can get to these other shows. I want to show these to you guys. Okay. Let's try it from here. I'll give you guys a brief rundown on what next week's show or this week's shows are going to be all about. All right, there's us live. All right, so tomorrow, the Rosicrucian Justinian Apollo connection. So I just did a basic search, and I thought, okay, I wonder if there's an Apollo connection to Justinian, and lo and behold, there was. So we're going to cover that tomorrow. Day after tomorrow, we're going to talk about the Apollo 12 moon mission eclipse that never happened. We're going to do some perspective studies on this. We're going to basically look at a very famous tower in New York City, and we're going to do a scale model of the distances that we are told exist between the sun and the moon and the earth. We're going to do a scale model just using objects right off the street. And I got some images captured, and you're going to see for yourself that from where the astronauts were, which was very close to the moon, there's no way that they saw this eclipse in 1969. There's no way. So we're going to expose that. July 4th, eclipse. This is July 2nd's live stream. We're going to talk about a film that came out 19 years ago called The Kiss of the Dragon. And he takes a needle and pokes it in the guy's neck. This is Jet Li. The film was called The Kiss of the Dragon. And the weird thing about this film is that it released the day after an eclipse 19 years ago. And then I looked into it and I was like, wow, that July 6th eclipse is part of the Metonic cycle, the 19-year cycle that we uncovered. So that eclipse is a cousin of the eclipse that's going to happen in just a few days. And then I looked, and that year also had a 19-year Metonic cycle December 14th eclipse in 2001. And we're having a December 14th eclipse this year. So what we have is a convergence. We have the sun and its 14-year Metonic cycle converging with the moon and its Metonic cycle in the year 2001, 19 years ago. And we basically now are living in the year 2001. They're sister years. And so, Jet Li, the Chinese kung fu artist, takes a needle and sticks it in the neck of his opponent at the end of the film. And that's exactly where we're headed in 2020. We're going to cover that. Now I'm going to give this one away. I didn't give too many clues on this live stream. This is called Fluminati Surprise. What's this about? I hope people don't run with this and do their own shows on this, because I really want you guys to watch this show on it. But I thought it was very appropriate on the eve of the eclipse, the 3rd of July, to do this show. I found lots of Illuminati cards with face masks. And that's what we're going to cover on this show. Now everybody's going to go out and find those cards and they're going to do their own shows. But hopefully they'll mention that they heard it here. And you guys can come back and listen to our take on that. So, let's take a look here. Let me show you one of these. You know, I'm not making this up. This one, there's another one here. It's like 3 or 4 of them with these masks on. Look at this. That looks like Biden. So we're going to go over all that. I think that's Friday's show. So that's pretty much it. Let's go back into the stream here. All right. We're probably going to end the show there. I'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. Thanks everybody for coming out. Take care and be safe.